Okay, let's bring in Paul Ingram, who is a nuclear disarmament researcher at the Centre for the Study of Existential Risk in Cambridge. Welcome to you, Paul. Now, prior to the attacks by Israel and the US, there were conflicting narratives about whether or not Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapon. What's your opinion based on the facts that you've seen?
Well, there are no serious analysts that are independent that I know of that had any proof that Iran was pursuing a nuclear weapon. On the other hand, it's also clear that Iran was developing the capability and was acquiring at quite some speed significant quantities of highly enriched uranium to 60%. Needs to go higher than that, but that doesn't take a great deal of effort and energy within the centrifuge cascades. So, but there are a number of other stages that also need to be conducted before you have a usable weapon system and an arsenal. There was no evidence of recent research in those particular areas. There was a lot of deliberate disinformation around the IAEA report last month, including the idea that that Iran had a number of facilities where it was proven recent research that broke their safeguards agreements. Though that evidence could have been planted, or if it was genuine, the agency was believed that it related to activities pre-2003. So there was no rush other than this accumulation of highly enriched uranium that the Iranians, under the terms of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and their safeguards agreement, had every right to do.
What do you think about the role that Rafael Grossi plays in all this? Iran was saying we expected you to come out and defend us and say they were not developing weapons and say this was there was no merit for this attack. Do you think he should have said more?
Well, Grossi did say after the attacks began that he had no evidence of a nuclear weapon program. And the response from the Iranians was, well, it's all rather too late. You could have said that much earlier in the bombing campaign, and certainly, even more importantly, just before it happened and when the agency report came before the Board of Governors. I think Grossi has been late. I think there are a number of political reasons for that. I won't go into the detail, but I think that there are legitimate concerns that the Iranians have that willingly or unwillingly, Grossi has been used by the Israelis, who were able to point to certain ambiguities in his report and make implications that were just not there. And the Board of Governors picked up that report and declared non-compliance in the belief that this would put greater pressure on Iran. But actually, it was used quite actively by the Israelis to justify their bombing. So I think there are quite legitimate criticisms that the Iranians have for the activities, firstly, of the agency and its Director General Grossi, and then the Board of Governors, and then, of course, the Israelis, and then the Americans.
I surely can't be the only one who sees the irony in this. You have Israel carrying out military attacks and talking about the danger posed by Iran potentially getting a nuclear weapon. If Iran has to reveal its nuclear ambitions, why is Israel not put under pressure to do the same?
Well, Iran is a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and has legal obligations under that treaty and in its safeguards agreements with the agency when Israel has chosen not to join that. So under the international system of sovereign states, Israel just hasn't made those commitments. Yes, of course, there is an irony, and there is an irony that Israel points to commitments that other countries make that it has had no intentions of making itself. But I think we need to see beyond the fairness. The unfairness of this situation makes people's blood boil, and I understand that. But actually, even more important is the stability of the international system. And what we have seen in these Israeli and American bombings is a massive damage to the rule of international law, breaking the constraints of Article 51 of the UN Charter and a number of other international legal instruments. And the rest of the international community, bar the Europeans, seem to recognize much more clearly that this demonstrates a flagrant disregard of international law by Western states when it suits them. Where does that leave their criticism of Russia and their invasion of Ukraine, for example? We are entering a very dangerous period in international relations and the stability of the international system. And as an optimist, I hope this leads us to ask questions around how we rebuild the system in ways that are fairer than it has been in the past, because the rules-based international system has been made in the interests largely of Western states, and hopefully, I am hopeful this crisis, as we are seeing it, will be used by states in the international system not to just go down the unilateral route, but to rebuild it in a much fairer way.
Paul, thank you so much for coming on the News Hour here on TRT World. Paul Ingram is my guest. He's a nuclear disarmament researcher at the Centre for the Study of Existential Risk.